Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Archaeology with Flint Dibble. This is a week of live streaming, isn't it? This is the fourth night in a row I've been live streaming. So it's great to see people here, I think. Make sure you can put in the chat that you can hear me, because we know that that's sometimes a problem, though usually not. So today I have a special guest, Tristan Boyle. We've been talking a lot over the last couple of years about public archaeology and engagement and stuff like that. And that is because Tristan very much defines himself as a digital public archaeologist with a degree in chemistry and archaeology from the University of Aberdeen. And he started podcasting at a really young age, at the age of 16. And he co-founded the Archaeology Podcast Network in 2014. Here, wait, let me just, or we'll put that up in a second. I'll ask you about that. And he's a keen advocate of the benefits of media outreach for archaeology. He's contributed to books and journals on the subject and has led podcasting workshops and lectures. So ever since I started doing this kind of YouTubing podcasting stuff, Tristan was like, hey, we got to chat about this. And so recently we started talking about trying to have him on the channel about once a month, once every other month, whatever we can work out, and to just chat about different fun topics, maybe do some fun debunks. But right now, I think we want to sort of dive into that kind of expertise and think about public archaeology. And in particular, this conversation will revolve around this blog post that he made called The Death of the Archaeologist from 2015, though it's still very pertinent today. And before we go on, though, I just want to give a quick plug for the Archaeology Podcast Network, which Tristan has co-founded, and he's been a host of different podcasts and producer of different podcasts on here. Everybody go check out archaeologypodcastnetwork.com. There's a whole range of phenomenal archaeology podcasts there, and they cover a lot of themes. So yeah, Tristan, it's really good to have you here.
Yes, thank you. I'm really sorry.
Speak up. You're not loud enough.
2 seconds. I'm very, very sorry that I did not bring a book. That's what I'm sorry. Did not bring a book. And
not all my guests have written books. I just find people that have written books recently are willing to talk about it.
Well, that's it. I've got a blog post, and that's from like 10 years ago. But no, it's really good. I love seeing what you've done. I've seen your amazing guests, and I think I'm a big fan of your chat as well. So. Hello, Flint's chat, and yes, indeed,
hey,
we are going to be talking about we're going to be talking about stereotypes, but we're already ticking off a few boxes there, but it's interesting to me because I think sometimes when people do talk about public archaeology, it's a bit like how the sausage is made. And I think sometimes people think, no. People just want to know about the pots. They just want to know about the flints. They just want to know about what's happening there. But actually, I think more and more, I would like to see us kind of create a kind of understanding of the process of archaeology. And that's, for me, that's where public archaeology comes in. It's about kind of not just telling, but showing. So I kind of want to start at the start with public archaeology, because I think when I was first doing archaeology at university, I actually started as a chemistry student, and it was one of my electives at university. And I remember doing the first course on, it was just human prehistory, and it was really interesting and fascinating. And it was only when we had like an essay about the Neanderthals at the end as like a top mark, like it was like the thing that would score you throughout the entire course. I remember looking up about the Neanderthal Genome Project, because at that time they were sequencing that genome, and I was like, that's really cool. So there was lots of really great newspapers, the media all picked that up and were talking about it, and that's really what fascinated me. And it kind of started me on the trajectory to like really getting into archaeology.
Wait a second.
I think it's
I
really
have a weird error.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Yes. So the Neanderthal Public Project is. I always tell students about that, actually, because it's also one of the few times where archaeology won a Nobel Prize, and so I think that is just really quite cool, because in terms of public engagement, it really got people to think about what archaeology is and what it tells us about who we are as people, if you think about it, because it's sequencing one of our closest relatives. 1 second, I'm a little worried that something went wrong. I got some weird error message. Are we still here, people? Let me go on the YouTube page.
Yeah, chat.
Ah,
Chat.
what happened?
Chat. Oh
Well,
no.
if the chat comes through, yes. Okay. Well,
Twitch
Twitch
is saying
says we're
it.
still here.
Okay.
Let's see what's going on with. I got some weird
Yeah.
error message. Okay, they're saying we're still here. Okay, good. We're still good. So yeah, so I think that that's a really appropriate thing to be thinking about in terms of public engagement, because of how much of a splash that made. Svante Pabo and the Max Planck Institute there. I mean, they really became a big public thing because of that. And it was really that which started what you still see today, 15 years later, this just engagement and interest in ancient DNA. And so I think in many ways we could also think about the problems with that, right? Because, if we're thinking about the death of an archaeologist, in some ways, ancient DNA marks the death of an archaeologist. What we see is a lot of non-archaeologists who have those degrees in chemistry and organic chemistry and bioinformatics and stuff like that have zero, but you have experience in the field. And so many of these people don't have an experience excavating contexts. And so they don't think about the context in which these genomes that they're sequencing are deriving from. And they don't understand the social, cultural history of the field as well. So like, I don't know, one thing I really want to do is try to do some videos on the history of archaeology and talk about how the development of thought over time. But you see, especially some of the first 10 years of ancient DNA papers. I talked about this with Dr. Hannah Moots. She's a postdoc in ancient DNA, and she has a lot of archaeology experience as well. And we were critiquing that, saying it's all culture history, if you see what I mean. You know what that means. Probably a lot of people in the chat don't, but it's an outdated way of interpreting archaeological cultures and histories and artifacts and contexts. Yeah.
I think that's the thing about public archaeology. It's one of the greatest challenges we have is basically trying to deal with the realities of modern media. And that's why I think I really like other alternative content. I'll say alternative. I mean, I specifically mean stuff like YouTube, stuff like Twitch, other things that are not traditional forms of media. Because within traditional forms of media, it's very much about the headline, which I mean we now call clickbait. But there's an issue when we're trying to translate information and trying to figure out what's the best way of kind of conveying that in an appropriate way. So I think sometimes the way that I like to think about public archaeology is how do we actually bypass the traditional forms of media and get out that information directly to people? Because I think people are fascinated by archaeology. I certainly am. I think other people are as well. And I think the important thing we have to realize, and why I still feel this way about how we get people on board, is by kind of linking people directly to that information, or by giving them the context that's important to kind of think through it. Ancient DNA is a great example. It's actually it is complex, in terms of like, even just if you think about the methodology of extracting that DNA, the processing of it. And I'm not a specialist in ancient DNA. I do know that DNA recomposition and the process by using the way you kind of create a profile of it, there's errors, there's noise, there's other things. There's ways of trying to pick that apart that may, when somebody's kind of saying, oh, I'm gonna kind of like make this more concise, you miss the big picture. So I think that there's a benefit to what I see as the role of archaeologists in doing more public archaeology, but sometimes it's who's doing that public archaeology that's part of the issue.
Yes. Before we move on to who's doing it, I was just to
Okay.
share my own journey with it. I
Mhm.
started, and this ties in with a lot of things that you were talking about. I started off doing public archaeology when I was a grad student. We had a wealthy donor give a bunch of money to the department to basically empower the graduate students to go around Cincinnati and deliver lectures at young sort of classrooms, to institutions like museums, to retirement communities, basically any institution or community that put in a request. They would pay $100 for a grad student to go give a lecture. And so they could request whatever lecture they wanted. I did one on food. I did one on how to do archaeology. So that's how I got started. But then when I went to my postdoc, I started going online, right? And I got on Twitter and I started writing Twitter threads. And that's eventually how I ended up building up my name in the digital sphere, and then getting on Joe Rogan, et cetera, was through writing incisive and insightful Twitter threads. And I very quickly was paying attention to how archaeology is portrayed in the media. And boy, was I angry, right? It was just like the headlines, the way everything was presented. And then at
We're
the same
baffled.
time, I had a
Baffled.
burgeoning understand. Yeah, we're always baffled by what there is. It's always a mystery. And it's always just the same thing. Things keep getting older. And then what happens is then you have this pseudo-archaeology community that weaponizes these tropes to be able to play off the way archaeology is in the media to radicalize people in that direction. And so I said, whoa, this is a huge fucking problem. And so that's why I started doing more and more of it, because I realized that, like, I also came to the realization that nobody really has an opportunity to take archaeology. I mean, very few people do at a sort of educational level. It's not really taught outside of the university level. And at the university level, very few people elect to take archaeology or major in it. And so what that means is very, very few people have anything other than just a passing, very minimal exposure with archaeology itself. And so, yeah, that's been what sort of motivated me. And yeah, I've learned to really like these kind of long form conversations. With Twitter threads, you write these really short, snappy things trying to go viral. With these kind of long conversations, people, I think probably most of you tune it in on the background and you're working or you're doing whatever. Some of you are here on the chat, and that's awesome. Hello, chat. But at the same time, this lets us dig into the nuance of things, right? And sort of speak around it and perform our authentic selves. We can just be who we are without having to be too polished and stuff like that. So yeah.
I totally agree with you. And actually, it was in early 2014. I was listening to a lot of archaeology podcasts at that time. So when I was 16, I started podcasting. It was about video games. I mean, look at
Okay.
me. I could be podcasting about video games right now. I would be on brand. But I did it about video games, and I was I was doing my summer exams, and I said to my parents, look, if I get this, then can I podcasting kit? It was a Brunner podcasting kit, and it had like a mixing desk, it had a microphone, a USB input. I loved it. And I remember when I went to university, however, I kind of was getting re-involved with the student radio there. So I kind of like sideline podcasting for a bit, and I kind of just did student radio. And it came towards the end of my degree, and I was like, I got all these things that I want to talk about. I think there's all these things that are really like burning in my head. And, I kind of was like, I wish I had an outlet for this. Wait, I'll listen to some podcasts, I'll see what's out there. And what really bothered me was that archaeology podcasts back in like 2013, 2014 were either museums who basically did like a
Mm-hmm.
documentary style. There was like a couple of people who focused on specific time periods, but there wasn't really there wasn't something that I was looking for. I was looking for something that was vibrant, that was interesting, that was insightful, but kind of going out the normal realm. Because that's another
Mm-hmm.
key thing about the public archaeology I think is really important. It's like, look, we all know about the Vikings, we all know about the Romans, the ancient Egyptians. Great, fantastic. And you know what? If you like listening about those, that's fantastic. But what about the stuff we don't know about? What can you tell me about the social lives of, 13th century farmers in Bordeaux? what can you tell me about the archaeology of brushing teeth? I mean, we use mineral wear analysis, so that's like how teeth are worn down, to kind of infer dietary patterns. Well, we're all brushing our
Hmm.
teeth now. Does that mean archaeologists, thousands of years ahead in the future, will they find it difficult to kind of know how old our teeth are? Like, because we're brushing it and we're restoring and remineralizing it. Those are interesting questions. And nobody was doing that when I started. I was like, I've got to do it. I've got to make something that is, that is not that's not there. And that's why I started my podcast. And I was like, I'm going to do something different. And in 2014, I did the first archaeology podcast about archaeology in video games with Andrew Reinhardt. He was the first person to
Aha.
say yes.
I know Andrew. Yeah. Yeah.
But he was not necessarily the first person I'd actually asked. And this is another side to like podcasting that I don't think people really know about. But particularly back then, I think the people I was asking, the archaeologists asking, were very worried of being misrepresented. I think there's a general
Hmm.
fear sometimes that when you're talking to somebody for content, that they might take you out of context. They might use you. We've
Hmm.
seen this before. We've seen this in
Well,
documentaries,
and
especially, particularly.
this is the
Yeah,
problem. This is what the media does to us. It misrepresents us all the time. And I mean, I have an article coming out on this on pseudo archaeology documentaries, but it's true in legitimate archaeology documentaries as well. My dad always complained. One time he was on, it's called the Human Spark, and it was hosted by Alan Alda, who is a staunch defender of science and scientists and science communication and stuff like that. And there's this one silly line where they're in this cave in France, and Alan is talking to the three co-directors of the project, and he's like, "So, what would you say the population of Neanderthals is?" And the first co-director's like, "I don't know." The second one's like, "I don't know." The third one's like, "I don't know." And my dad's like, maybe 30,000." And that goes in the documentary. And like the day after it airs, he gets emails from all his colleagues and is like, "How could you say that? That's blah, 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 blah." That's like, and he's just like, "I was spitballing, whatever." But, that's always what happens is it's like the weird random offhand thing that you say that ends up in the documentary and not the actual results that you have. And you end up getting clipped out of context. And so there is this justifiable worry. And I think that's where podcasting can help because it is so raw. It's not as
yeah,
edited and slicked down. Of course, people are worried with the live stream of saying something and making a mistake. But at the same time, you do have the context here. I present everybody in their context. And it's also where being an archaeologist is a little easier to understand the context that they're trying to share, if you see what I mean,
yeah.
because we're familiar with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try not to say something that's breaking TOS, Flint. I'll try. I'll try. Okay. Right.
That's okay. I can clip you out on the repeat.
Of course, hide the evidence, just like a real archaeologist would. This is big archaeology, hiding the evidence. No, but this is the thing: is that we have a situation where, on one hand, people feel like we should be doing more to get the real stories out there and the passionate people out there, but at the same time, we're worried about being, taken out of context. So for me, it was really important that to do my best to do better public archaeology was to show the passion that people had and to get the best out of them. And that's where
Mhm.
I think that's where I can come from, because I care about the things that people don't really think about. So like my episodes, like you'll find in my back catalog things like how are disabled people treated in the archaeology sector, and that can lead to looking at disability in the past, which is really, really fascinating, because I think we sometimes have this issue where we kind of think of these kind of modern issues as solely modern issues, but we have lots of evidence of people having coping strategies with things in the past. Actually, to that point, we also, on the Archaeology Podcast Network, I have to plug it, we have a new show
Uh-huh.
called ADHD BCE, where our host George kind of talks to experts about different historical figures, and he generally talks about like neurodiversity and the impact that has on his life as he studied archaeology, worked as an archaeologist. He now does something different. Typical archaeology, it happens a lot where people start off as archaeologists and then go and do something else. But it's a really, really cool, different way of looking at the past. And it's really important to point out here that we can't necessarily diagnose people with neurodivergency in the past, right? That's basically impossible. However, what we can look at is we can look at the traits we have now for neurodivergency, and we can look at historical documents, we look at context, and we start to build a bigger picture of how people thought and how people felt in the past. And that is a really, really key important part. We have to remember that there's almost like a duality when we talk about people in the past. We are human, they are human. We have like normal base needs, they have normal base needs. But like it's crazy stuff like, you know, like the Roman Empire you had to register for birth your citizenship, right? So you had to have a record of citizenship to be a Roman citizen. And I mean, it's kind of like weird to think that like back hundreds, thousands of years, we had people doing bureaucracy, which I think generally the public sees as a very modern thing. So it's about connecting the present to the past. And I think that's really, really beneficial because it only humanizes the past and gives value to the objects that we find and the people that we find, but it also means that people can actually relate better to when people are like, well, this is something that somebody used every single day, you know? I think that's really, really powerful. And that's really, really important that we kind of get that connection out there.
Yeah, I was just talking about a lot of these topics actually just yesterday with Dr. Mudi al-Rashid, because obviously with cuneiform, you have a lot of that bureaucracy. And at the same time, you have these stories that let you connect with people in the past and see how similar but different they really were. And so it's so true. And I think that that's a lot of the fun of teaching archaeology and sharing it, is to try to get that point across, that they are just people, but also they're very different, and that should give you an appreciation for different cultures in the past and present.
Totally. I mean, like think about the Nasir's copper complaint, the complaint about the poor quality copper. I mean, that is an astronomical meme. Precisely
I know.
because, like, if school or it's from like channel or it's kind of like a cultural awareness of history, um, it's crazy to think that like no people complained back then, you know.
Where's the meme?
And this is that survived. Think about all the complaints that haven't survived.
That have not. Oh God, lots. We certainly have lots of them from other periods. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think that's really good. But I think the problem sometimes is that with public archaeology, sometimes you have to get over the barrier of the stereotypes that already exist in archaeology. I mean, we joked about it before, but like bearded white men with glasses going and digging in foreign countries and writing about other people's history is, yeah, I mean that is a stereotype of archaeology. You know, you got Indiana Jones. I mean, Tomb Raider to some extent, but I give Tomb Raider a bit of a pass because you know the dinosaurs and the guns and everything. So you know it's fictitious enough that people understand. There's a subversion of this is not actually what archaeologists do, you know. But like this is one of the things that you know. I mean, it's only small dinosaurs I've had to deal with on site, not big ones. So, it's it's that kind of that's one of the things that people I think is something we have to almost like jump ahead of or change the cultural story of what archaeologists are. You know, I think that's really really important, and I mean it's funny. This message is more to other archaeologists. I find myself talking talking to other archaeologists saying, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do. But in terms of like what my message would be to people who are just interested in archaeology is realize, that like archaeologists are people too. Technically, we're part of the
Hmm.
public too. We're at their level, and that kind of thinking is where that's why we're killing the archaeologist. The archaeologist it's not killing them necessarily per se. It's saying we're on the same level. There's no hierarchy here. I might know more stuff. I might have methodology, and I can go and get information, but I'm not better than anybody else just because
Hmm.
I'm a trained archaeologist. And that's I think that's another stereotype that we're trying to deal with. Is at one side we're trying to critique pseudo-archaeology, and we're trying to stand up for science, and we're trying to make sure that people understand that like there's actually proper data and evidence for this. But at the same time, we're fighting this kind of like assumption that archaeologists all live in ivory towers and are snobby rich bellends who talk down to people. So that can be quite a difficult like path to walk.
It is. It really, really is. And it's one of the really weird, conflicting things about talking to the public in today's world. If it was like 15 years ago, it would be easier to just focus on how we want to make the field more accessible and how we want to uplift different voices and how I work with amateur people all the time. I have trained I don't know how many different kinds of people, from retired individuals to high schoolers to hairdressers that come volunteer with me every week in the lab. And so it's just like everybody is generally welcome, and there's these kind of community things. But at the same time, there's this community out there that's trying to subvert the field and that's trying to profit off of archaeology by denigrating us and by saying that there's no right answer at all. It could be anything. And that's just false, completely false as well. So it's really walking this kind of tightrope of how to explain that there is room for experience and expertise, and it's important that that's there. But at the same time, the looking at the past and looking at archaeology is something that is accessible and should be accessible to everybody. We should all be able to look at primary sources and start thinking about what they can say. I mean, we do that with students on their very first day of class. And so, it's a very doable thing. But yeah, it's a real tightrope. And one thing you just have to realize is just you're never going to appeal to every member of an audience. It's just some people are going to vibe with what you have to say.
Mm-hmm.
Some people just never will, no matter what. And maybe they will from somebody else. It's just the cut of your jib that person doesn't like, and that's just life. And so, we just have to accept that to some degree. And I don't know, my philosophy is that's why we just need to fill up the internet. We just need to do a better job of filling the internet with as many voices, as many archaeological perspectives as we can. Every time I give a lecture, I'm like, every single professor should design one YouTube video a year. And so it's just like, if we can do that and represent the diversity of voices and opinions and perspectives that our field has, we can jive with more people and teach more people what the field is about. So that's kind of my perspective. But yeah, it's a real tightrope. It's not easy.
Well, cheers, Flint. You've taken the rest of my speaking points. So yeah, thank you very much for. No, I think totally.
So,
Well, I think I'm a little. I have a little different spin on this.
mhm.
So I think that when we talk about archaeology, right, and this is going to get really, really crazy here. You can kick me from the stream, but the thing is, the past could be anything. It really could, right? The way we find out what it was, we try and put pieces of the puzzle together. The fact is,
Mhm.
archaeology, the archaeological record, things decay. That is the long kind of entropy of time. Things decay. And while we as archaeologists are doing our best to preserve things and conserve them, things decay. And we will never be able to fully recreate what happened in the past. The methods that we use are sometimes destructive. Sometimes we have to kind of like say, right, well, look, we are legally obliged, like, for example, in the UK, we could do like 8-10% of the site before it's bulldozed for another big Tesco. You know, there are gaps in our knowledge and our understanding. The thing, and the very important thing about archaeology is that we understand those gaps and we understand the limits of that knowledge. You know, we understand that the evidence that we use, we are pointing from the known to the unknown. You know, we are trying
Hmm.
to figure out what's happening out there, knowing that, you know, trying to get a percent everything fits into place or understanding is never going to work. You know, an archaeological site is not is it's created, but not it's created by humans, but it's not necessarily created in a way that it has a final outcome. You know, when you play a video game, for example, you can break the game in lots of different ways because you can go out of bounds, you can do speed running, you can do all these crazy things. But what you're playing is a piece of material culture specifically built by a person for a specific purpose. An archaeological site
Hmm.
happens out of use, but not specifically because somebody's like, I'm going to make an archaeological site, you know. And so when we're digging stuff up, we don't, you know, like, who's to say that the limit of an archaeological site is this specific post and all this? This is what archaeologists really are dealing with. This is what they're tackling. This is what they're talking about. You know, I think this is the really key sausage making things that we should really be talking about, is that actually, no, archaeologists don't just dig up and say, yeah, that's 3,500 years old. It was probably this culture. Yeah, it was made like this. Like, nobody does that. No, no, no. Research, analysis, meticulous analysis is how we then put together information to actually build that picture. And sometimes what I think is happening is that people see the final product of the research or like, oh, that's really, really cool. But they don't realize how much has led up to that point, you know? And I think that is something that we're needing to better communicate, is how the bill is passed in Congress, or how the sausage is made, you know? How is
Yeah.
the process,
So I
you
will
know?
say that's tough. That's really, really tough to do. You know, it's one thing I learned on Twitter fairly quickly is you make a thread about methods and how the sausage is made, nobody reads it. You make a thread about some cool ancient dog, everybody reads it. And so if you can make a thread about an ancient dog that sneaks in how we study it with some methods, then you win. And so I think you're exactly right. We need to be teaching how the sausage is made, because otherwise, when we speak, they just say the people who would disagree with us, or people who are skeptical, or people who have different views on the past. Doesn't even need to be pseudo archaeologists. It could just be people's views on, I don't know, something about the Roman Empire. It doesn't matter. They're saying, well, how do you know that? Da, 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 da. Why should I trust you? I learned this in high school and it makes sense to me. And so, you know, and that's where it comes on us. We need to do two things at the same time. One, we have to compete with all these fluffy narratives out there that don't have any actual sausage making to them. And so they say that my audio is much louder than yours. You
I'll
might
do
want to,
some
can you turn up
adjustments
your
if I
mic a
can,
little?
yeah.
Okay. And so, but at the same time, so we need to do a better job of being clickbait and telling stories that interest people, while making sure to get those methods in there that explain how we do what we do and how we study the past in a way that is uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Rigorous, extremely rigorous. Most of the time, though not all the time, based in science and scientific approaches and the scientific method. And so trying to express that is, I think, really important. But yeah, we can't make a mistake by just jumping into methods, because it's funny. YouTube tells me people want methods. It's like they want, that's what YouTube says people search for. As soon as I make a video on that, nobody watches it. You know, if I make a video on debunking pseudo archaeology, everybody watches it. And so it's just like that we live in a world where people are primed to click on certain kinds of things, and we have to in a sense give some dessert with the carrots. I guess is the right way to put
The
it.
thing is, Flint, is that a little bit louder for everybody? Just chat, let me know.
You're still quiet. Yeah, no, you're even more quiet.
No, 2 seconds. More quiet? No, that can't be
Yeah,
happening.
you're very quiet right now.
2 seconds.
2 seconds,
Okay, is that a
everyone.
bit better? Is that even more quiet?
Yeah, that's a bit better. Yeah, that's
Okay,
better, I think.
perfect.
Yeah.
Do you think your videos and methods are just bad?
No,
you could
because
just be
I've
bad
never.
at it. You know what I mean?
Nah, because when I teach it to students, they like it.
Yeah, but those are students.
I'm really good
See,
at
this
that
is the
stuff when
thing.
I have a captive audience.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying, you know. I think that, to be absolutely honest, I agree with your plurality argument because plurality being there's not one audience, and there's not going to be this magical person who tells everybody or show everything and does everything perfectly. And that's actually to my point. I think that one of the really important things here, and actually coming back to the title of this, The Death of the Archaeologist, and you know, why we have to kill him. The archaeologist in my head is the perceived perception that people have of what an archaeologist does and how they behave.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm trying to kind of get at is that the kind of goodwill that an archaeologist has in, oh, they've got interesting things to learn about history, and there's all of these interesting facts and things that they can tell us and teach us about the past. There's this goodwill that, oh, they've probably done the methods right. I just need to know what's happened afterwards. I just need the facts, the information. That kind of like goodwill and thinking is actually being used by pseudo archaeologists to kind of like promote their side of things. They're like, no, we're just like them. We're interested in the past, and they are. Like, I mean, the thing is, Graham Hancock, you can accuse him of many things, but he's very passionate and very interested in what he talks about, right? And that's what archaeologists are as well. So to separate ourselves out, I think one of the important things is that archaeologists need to become more facilitators of the past. I like to talk about archaeological literacy, and it sounds like like a program. Archaeological literacy for me is like media literacy. It's how do people see what they're understand what they're seeing. And I think for a lot of people, when they see archaeology, everybody understands big monuments. We all see like really cool like shapes, pyramids. We don't have a lot of context for that. We look at the pyramids of Giza and we think, how did somebody build that? Well, you know how somebody built that. We actually have like hieroglyphs and murals about that. But to just see it and intuitively know, well, how was that made? I think archaeological literacy would be about knowing ahead of time, like, and anticipating, oh, this is maybe how they did stuff. Those are the kind of things that I think archaeology needs to do better in kind of getting people aware of the fact of the cool technologies that people did in the past. I remember reading an amazing paper, and it was in South America, and it was I'll get it wrong because I'm being recorded live and I just peeked at the back of my head. I think it might have been Argentina or Chile. It was somewhere very mountainous. And what they were doing is on these mountain slopes, there was not a lot of there's not a lot of arable land. So farmers have a trouble with doing on these farming on these not arable slopes. But when archaeologists were digging through there, they were finding soil stratigraphy that looked like not like the natural base soil. Instead, it was like layers of added in soil. And what they basically found was that on a lot of these steep slopes, people had built artificial fields. And it's really, really fascinating how ancient people in that area were able to use the landscape in this way but modern people had it was almost a lost technology. And archaeologists from that region were kind of looking at it and going, wait, this is what people did here before for like hundreds of years ago, and managed to farm this land. And it's things like that, linking from history to now. It's so valuable and so important. And the more people we have doing it, the better. But coming back to my point, I think it's really, really important that archaeologists are at the same level as everybody. Not talking down to people, not kind of like, archaeologists are not here to tell people what's right and wrong. You know, yes, we want to call out pseudo archaeology, but at the same time, like, I would rather get somebody interested in the past and whatever form that takes, and have them kind of look through the information and come to new thoughts and new feelings and new experiences about that could arguably find a way of like synthesizing information in a way we haven't done before. And that's what's really, really valuable, I think, about how public archaeology can fit into that. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, so
I'm
I
talking a
think
lot
part
now.
of the reason. No, you're fine. What are you talking about? You're my guest. I think there's some interesting things to unpack here, and one of them is I don't really have a problem most of the time if people have wrong interpretations of archaeology, meaning those that are unfounded in scholarship or something like that. The real problem with pseudo-archaeology and pseudoscience is it weaponizes a hatred towards the practitioners of the field. And so the problem is how do you push back against that? And it doesn't work to push back against that by just saying all the time that Graham Hancock or whoever else that's talking shit on us is just an asshole. It just doesn't work. And so even though that's the reality, if you look at the history of Graham Hancock talking trash on the field and denigrating Egyptologists, archaeologists, etc., this is a video I'm working on that goes back to the prehistory of Graham Hancock that shows he's been doing this since the 1980s and 1990s. And so, this is the problem with pseudo-archaeology, is it weaponizes hatred and vitriol towards practitioners of science and archaeology and other forms of scholarship. That's the actual problem that it creates in our society. But the issue is how to address that. Oftentimes, the most successful way to address that is to say, hey, you're wrong about the pyramids for XYZ. Here, let's learn some real archaeology about ABC on that. And that actually becomes an effective way where you can reach the public and get them interested as well and play off that drama that exists due to this kind of vitriol and whatever. And so that's my kind of philosophy there is we should be using that drama to publicize better what we do and how we do it, and also to humanize us, to show that we are actually humans, not nefarious actors. And so that's my issue with pseudo-archaeology. It's not so much that there's like people have a wrong opinion about archaeology. I mean, geez, everybody has wrong opinions about archaeology because, like I said, almost nobody has had a chance to have any, not even take a single class in archaeology. So no member of the public has a good sense of archaeology. In fact, most archaeologists don't have a good sense of archaeology outside of their own subdomains. And so, I make mistakes all the time. I make mistakes all the time speaking about this stuff. Yeah.
No, and I think I totally agree with you. I think the thing is, for me, I feel that one of the best things we can do is just communicate better who we are. As you said, like, we're people too. I think archaeologists are part of the public as well. We're in the crowd as well. I think that for me, podcasting and YouTube and other stuff has kind of like brought the kind of the pedestal down a wee bit. I'm very happy with that. We could put the knives away. Don't need to kill anybody. If the pedestal's coming down, I'm happy with that. But it's that kind of like thing of saying, look, let's kind of like let's bring it down to we're on the same level, and it's true. Like, we as archaeologists are not here to dictate, and I don't think it's effective to kind of just say, here to dictate. It's actually to show it. and to do it by communicating directly with people, which I think is a kind of where I'd like to see more archaeology, going in the future. Because, we can talk the talk and we can sit on our wee live stream and say, hey, archaeology should do this. But the fact remains that if, the people who are making the big decisions in archaeology, particularly the funding decisions in archaeology, and I don't mean big archaeology, just to be clear, I'm meaning like the,
Trademark.
organizations, the universities, yeah, the university, and, who's busy, and developers who fund the digs. I think it's people like that who are making that decision. What are they actually wanting as the outcome? Because, you could say, right, for this, I want a community project, people digging the ground, and that's it, kind of done and dusted, and there's nothing more to it. But like, I think it'd be more impressive and more impactful if we were somehow able to kind of continue that story of, well, these people, they had archaeological dig near where they lived, they all took part, and this is the kind of things that they saw when they were digging stuff up, and this is what they thought of it. And building that kind of sense that archaeology is not this, like, behind closed doors, you must be this tall in degrees to get in, dead, show it as a human, accessible, understandable thing. And I think that is then, if somebody goes on about how much they've researched and how much they've looked at stuff, it's like, yeah, but I can see that as well. I don't need this grand narrative to do that. We're in the wrong times period. We're living in interesting times, and everything, unfortunately, is now a conspiracy. So don't know how we're going to deal with that bit, but the best thing we can do is just communicate and communicate and communicate.
Yeah, and I also, though, I have to disagree with you for a second. I'm going to disagree with you actually kind of strongly, in the sense that I think your approach to archaeology is really good for in-person stuff, where you can have a give and take, and you can get hands-on with either a trench or an artifact in a museum or whatever, and you can start, or even in a classroom where you can engage with people where it's in person. When you're talking about doing digital engagement, though, there's not as much, it's not as much of a communication between, yeah, of course, my audience will ask us questions and we will respond and stuff like that, but the people tune into us because we are experts who can answer those kind of questions. And because we develop parasocial relationships where we are broadcasting our expertise and experience out there to people that are interested in learning from that. And so, while like I totally agree with what you're saying, I'm not sure if it actually adapts well for a digital medium with the kind of resources that we have. And like, I try to do my best to answer all questions that come into the chat, even the ones that, sorry guys, you all ask really good questions, but some of the questions aren't so good. I'll even try to answer some of those ones that I think are not so good and try to answer them in a truthful, honest, not denigrating way. But at the same time, like I said, it's really hard when you have these kind of social media platforms, whether it's Blue Sky or Twitter or Instagram or podcasting or YouTubing, it's very much broadcasting. And people tune in because they want to hear your perspective, or they like your personality, or they're interested in your expertise and experience. And so it's not that give and take in any way. And I think what you're talking about is phenomenal for a community project. It's phenomenal for having a hands-on discussion with a classroom or students that come through a museum or something. It's less effective for a digital platform, if you see what I mean.
Can I disagree with your disagreement?
Okay, if you want, you can try. So I'm going to quickly boot Tristan from here. Later, Tristan. All right, so it's just me now, and Tristan is gone. All right, sorry, now you can talk.
Oh no, that was live. Oh no, it's not to do that. So I think it's really, really important that we have this kind of back and forth. And you're absolutely right. The online world is different. I think I'll kind of recontextualize what I'm basically saying. I think expertise is important. I value expertise. I'm not an anti-intellectualist. Okay, just to make that really clear, because that is actually
Well,
something.
you are an anarchist, though, right? So, like,
I am actually. That's actually really well tying into this. So I picked an archaeologist as a brand 10 years ago because I wanted to do something outside the realm of normal kind of institutions. I knew that I probably would never be part of a museum. I didn't really want to be. It's actually a life goal of mine to be banned from the British Museum. I'm working on it for political reasons. Working on it, but I'm not quite there yet. But what I really, for me, I think it's really important to have a kind of like a perspective of your expertise will necessarily flow from the way you present yourself. I think that understanding what people are passionate about, what they're talking about, how they put things together, that is what draws audiences. But there's no one way of doing it. I was,
mm,
my example before was an example, and I think actually broadly coming from what you were saying before, we need a plurality. There are going to be many audiences, and there's going to be more people out there talking. Like there's going to be people broadcasting to them, and the more variety we have, the better. I mean, on the Archaeology Podcast Network, actually, shout out to Andrew Kinkella, who's in the chat. He has a podcast here on the Archaeology Podcast Network called Pseudo Archaeology. We have many different voices, and it's been really important to us as a podcast network to make sure that we have shows that kind of cover a variety of topics. We aren't interested in creating the same format for every single show. What's really interesting, I think, is that people appreciate like niches a lot more now. People like their little kind of weird, kind of like smash together kind of like format of different little pieces of ideas. I think that's really, really cool. And I think that it's really good that we have so many people that are able to kind of show in different ways these different pieces of expertise that they have. So I actually don't think we disagree that much. I think we're just coming to the point of saying, well, it's different horses for different courses, and we need as many horses as possible, and we need to make
yes,
sure we don't
and
put
and I
horse before
mean,
the cart.
and one of our big efforts that we did on this channel and elsewhere, it was to organize that hashtag Real Archaeology event, and
Yeah.
everybody should go to the website. Because part of the goal there was it was meant to highlight archaeology public communication that was beyond just archaeologists. So there's a lot of people that have podcasts and YouTube channels and TikToks that share real good archaeology, even though they have no experience doing archaeology at all. And so, and so that was part of the goal there, because I am an equal opportunities type person. You're sharing good stuff, I'm cool with that. You're sharing antagonistic stuff or you're saying you know more than us, fuck off. Like it's
Yeah.
really that simple. And
And
so,
that's the hierarchy that I'm standing against. That's why I'm an archaeologist, because I think that we need to have this kind of like the way we do this is not about presetting. Oh, you've got this degree and you've got like these accolades and everything. No, it's actually about the person and the information, boiling it down to like who is this person, how are they connecting, what are they referencing. That's really, really valuable. And that's why I think real archaeology was a great example, actually, of, kind of not saying, right, here's how we're gatekeeping this. I think expressing ourselves like this in a really open position is how people kind of like, they want to talk to us, And I think it's been really good as a podcast network. We've actually had the social media manager for the last two years now, Tilly, and she's done all the socials. She does the reels and the TikToks. Um, I honestly, I must say that I've not gotten to TikTok yet. I'm getting old. I'm getting to the point
I
where I'm
mean,
like,
for
oh
me,
no.
even doing this YouTube channel is a weird jump because I consume everything by reading. And I don't listen to podcasts or watch YouTube channels. I
You
listen to
don't listen
music
to
on YouTube.
Archaeology Podcast Network?
Sorry, I don't listen to any podcast. I barely knew who Joe Rogan was before I went on the Joe Rogan experience.
Well,
So,
you
like,
messed up there, man. You could have lived a life not knowing who Joe Rogan was. Like, you could have saved yourself.
But I mean, I do think that, yeah, we have to engage in every way possible. I think we're at the point where it's like we have to get every voice out there, people with experience, people without experience, people with passion. And we need to, we talked about how scholars are very hesitant to speak up, and we need to get them out of that. We need to show them that it's fine to make mistakes and you should just fucking speak up and be yourself.
The other side of it is that that's the expertise for us, for me and you, Flint. We can be the distributors. At the end of the day, I will say, look, I have an archaeology degree. I have a bachelor's with honors. That's all I have. That is the extent. And I will say this on top, because of the weird way I went through university. I did one piece of fieldwork during university before I graduated. My classmates, by comparison, had done it for years. Some of them even traveled to field schools during summer. I didn't. But I never wanted to be I didn't want to be the person telling people, specifically, right, I have done this field work, I can tell you about this and this. I understood that from a very young age, that I wanted to do podcasts. I then realized, hey, I can actually get other people to talk about what they're interested in because I'm interested in what they have to say, and maybe somebody else would like to, to hear that. So I think there's a space for people to not necessarily be a specific expert, but to bring out that expertise from other people and provide a safe platform for other people to talk. That's why I see my own podcast is like a place where people can talk about what's going on. And it also doesn't have to be archaeologists per se. I did one of my recent episodes. I talked to a filmmaker called Brent E. Huffman, who about 10 years ago filmed at a site in Afghanistan. Now, this is Mes Aynak, where local archaeologists were trying to save the site because a Chinese mining company wanted to strip mine the place for copper. And he went there with, cameras, he went there with the recording equipment, and he kind of filmed them doing that and made a film out of it. Now, he doesn't have an archaeological background, but the important story that was told was about the lives of these archaeologists living both under, trying to live around the government at the time and between the government and the Taliban, and trying to do archaeology that was under risk. And that is a story that's really important to tell because, again, a lot of people see history and archaeology as this kind of pedestrian thing where you're taking off like line by line, you're kind of taking centimeter by centimeter. But actually, there's parts of the world where heritages actually could be destroyed and we can lose it forever because of conflict, because of mining companies, and just generally the need for resource. And those are the things that we have to make sure that we highlight so that we don't lose them. I think that's really, really important as well. And to that point, there's people like myself, there's people like all the other archaeologists on the Archaeology Podcast Network who are able to facilitate that kind of art information getting out there and make it interesting for people to listen to. So
I
think there's
fully agree.
Yeah, I think it's and the thing is,
I mean, and I think that's key here too, because I get your community approach, but at the same time, I actually think there's a real craving in the public for understanding archaeology from an expert and an expert's point of view. That's something that I have seen, and that's what we need to facilitate, is to build that bridge between that, because what happens is that void is being filled by these people who are pretending expertise without expertise, and they use more jargon than we do. Like Hancock and Randall Carlson and the Ancient Aliens crowd, they use so much jargon to make it sound like they have expertise. And so, I really think what we need to do is really just break down this barrier. And with social media and with these sort of digital platforms, we can do that in a sense. I think there's a capability there to do that. I mean, that's one of my main goals of switching towards live streaming and trying to do these on here is it's so I can start doing more, having more people on more regularly without having to do much editing, and to be able to get that out there so that people can see, and then I can see what has traction and things like that, and start to adjust, because I have more content out there to have statistics to look at what's working, what isn't, and how to tweak that to be able to get that across better. And so while before we were able to get like one video a month, now I did 4 live stream conversations in just this week. And so it's just like, that I think is the key, is to get over that. And what I've learned is that a lot of my colleagues are waking up to the fact, meaning those in academia, are waking up to the fact that they need to do a better job communicating with the public. So I have a lot of people that want to come on. And so it's just like, I don't even have time, even with this, where I could do like 3 a week. And so it's just like, we have to break down, I don't know, it's like the Wizard of Oz, get rid of that veil there, and to try to make that more accessible, if you see what I mean. And in many ways, that's what I think about with this sort of metaphor. Let's return to the title of the video, so it's not all just clickbait. Let's think about this idea of the death of an archaeologist and what we need to kill. So tell me, what are the top 3 things in the field that we need to kill?
I think we really need to kill the idea that Indiana Jones is a good archaeologist. I'm sorry, that one's out the no, that's a silly one.
I don't think anybody thinks he's a good archaeologist. But that said, one of the things I've always thought is he's an adequate representation of archaeology like 100 years ago. If you see what I mean, that stereotype of an adventurer, explorer, asshole, misogynist, racist type, that is what it was 100 years ago. And to some degree, sometimes still is. And so, in that sense, I actually think we need to embrace Indiana Jones and take it as a challenge to remake the field and make it better.
Yeah. I think what we have to kind of like, what do we have to kill first? I think it's just the idea that there's somebody out there who is the arbiter of archaeology or arbiter of history and just gives you facts, doesn't do anything else, says, these are the facts, that's it. I think we need to kill this idea that like you can create an understanding of history through dates and places, and just have those singular bits of information and nothing else. Like, we need more. We need more context. There needs to always be lots of juicy information. If I'm learning about the past, I don't want 2 dry pieces of bread. I want the full bacon, lettuce, tomato. I want the full beaker, lithic. I'm thinking of something with tea. Trench sandwich. Okay. I want the big. I need something more that like nourishes me. So I think making it more about communicating, and I know that's such a generic phrase. How do I put this in a way that doesn't sound?
No, I think you're exactly right, because I've been hitting upon something similar. Where what I try to tell scholars when they ask me about different ways to engage is I try to tell them, stop engaging with the public and sharing your research. Because what you do when you share your research is you're sharing some facts about what you discovered. And instead, engage with the public as if they are in your classroom, so that you're trying to teach. You give them some facts and a story around which you're teaching how we do this stuff. And why we do it, and how it's relevant and interesting, and how we approach it. And so that's what I try to argue with people. Not argue, it's not an argument. That's how I try to explain. I'm actually going to the SAAs, and me and Milo Rossi, the Mini Minuteman, we're doing a workshop for archaeologists and scholars and how to better do YouTube and other types of public engagement. And so, the main goal there, one of my main messages is going to be, look, you have to approach this like it's a classroom. And that also means you have to stop thinking that you deserve respect. Because if you're a teacher in 2025 and you go into a classroom like a Sage on the Stage from like 1980 and you just expect your students to respect you, well, that just ain't happening anymore in 2025. You have to earn their respect. And the same thing, of course, is true with the public as well. you know?
See, I'll take it down even a further level. I'd say
Okay.
explain it in the pub. Like
Yeah,
really,
sure.
really get down to level. Like there's actually so little respect. Like I'm just trying to have a drink. Stop talking about it like this. Make it more, yeah, like. And the thing is, it's not about simplifying it beyond making it like basically useless. It's about kind of like, yeah, to the point. And the other thing is that like different audiences want different things. The thing is, there's not even a point in, if somebody has like the mindset, they're like, I believe all the pseudo archaeology stuff. You know what? Like, I don't know if it's worth our time actually trying to argue with that person, and instead like devote our energy to people who are actually interested. Like, I think there's also a question about like finding the audiences that are actually genuinely interested and actually using our energy for them as well. Also, another thing we have to do better
No, I think it's cool.
is,
I see
yeah,
stuff like
sorry.
engaging with pseudo-archaeology as a way to find them.
Yeah, okay. I think, yeah, I think the problem is,
Because
they've
that
let so
drama
many, yeah,
draws eyeballs.
I know.
Yeah. And so that drama draws eyeballs. That's good for one video, okay. But
Yeah,
those that stick around are those that are genuinely interested. And so you have to do something still. So, like, I don't know, I think of it as like some things I create for my YouTube channel are for the people that are already watching me, they're for my fans.
yeah,
Other things are for trying to get it beyond that
yeah.
fan base to draw in new people. And so, we have to do a bit of both if we're going to find that audience, because we have to find that audience and that audience needs to find us. And so if we don't do stuff
Sure.
like have a few clickbait things or a few dramatic engagements, we'll never find that audience.
No, that's true. I think it's just about the how often that happens, and like where that is in the whole grand scheme of things. But yeah, no, I do agree that there's times, but you need to pick your battles. And I mean, you
Of course.
you certainly picked the biggest battle. I don't think you could get any bigger than that. But yeah, it's going to be. I think it's going to get worse before it gets better. To be absolutely honest, with how the world's going at the moment, and not to touch directly on anything, but I think it's really important that we live in a world where archaeology is, it's interesting to people, but like there's decisions being made around the world about like how important that is. I mean, even in the UK, they keep talking about the planning law. They keep talking about building more and more houses and trying to make sure remove the blocks in the planning law over here. And it's like, well, there's not really that too much left to kind of take out because there's the archaeology, there's environmental kind of stuff. So, it kind of sometimes makes me kind of fearful that like we need to really be selling how important archaeology is to everyone so that one day some government doesn't come in and goes, actually, you know what? Archaeology is no longer needed before you start digging to build a new house or build a new big school.
Well, I think we're in that way in the U.S. I mean, the U.S. has now laid off hundreds, if not thousands, of archaeologists in the last couple of weeks. I'm going to have a few of them on the channel in the next 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And in addition, they're cutting funds. And I guess one of the major boards that's involved in approving stuff, people resigned.
Yeah.
And so they can't even have meetings. And so there's a lot of worry in the U.S. as well. And also here in the U.K. I was just talking to the head of department today about what's happening in the UK, and the Labour government seems to be watering down these kind of laws. And so it's just like we are really seeing the death of the archaeologist from another direction, and in a way that's going to really significantly damage the field. And so it's also why, as much as I feel like we need to reform the field, so much of what happens in the field is impacted by external factors, that the first thing we need to do is make a better case to the external environment. Because how do we improve diversity in the field if all the jobs are just disappearing? There's no way to solve that problem when there's no jobs. And how do we improve public communication if there's no funds for people to communicate publicly, because it takes time and energy. You have to remunerate people for what they're doing if you're going to make it sustainable.
Yeah.
And so unless we can actually address the politicians and the people who elect those politicians to support what we do, we are, no matter what we try to do among ourselves, who the fuck cares? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's going to be nothing left, you know?
No, it's this argument of it. Yeah, I think there needs to be some sort of kind of like coming together internally to have a unified front, but at the same time, like let's find a way of actually making things better. Making things better within and without. Peace within and peace without, you know. But it's going to take time and it's going to take effort. And I think that this is the kind of important conversations we need to have. You know, I think it's
I agree. And those that don't want to have them, they're the ones that we should be killing.
You know, it's a metaphor, Flint. You know, it's always been a metaphor.
Oh, wait, this is a metaphor? But you said the archaeologist has to die and we have to be the ones to kill him.
Yeah, it's like Nietzsche.
But Andrew Kinkella already said he's going to go kill people.
Like, you know the whole Nietzsche thing, God is dead and we have killed him. He didn't mean literal God. You know that.
I thought Nietzsche killed like Thor or someone like that, like Odin or I don't know, one of those gods.
For an archaeologist, you have a very poor recollection of Norse mythology. Like,
I thought that's how Nietzsche became the Ubermensch. I thought that's how he became an Ubermensch, right? He killed a god. It was in the comic book that I read, I swear. That's how Superman started. No, I hear you. And I think this is the type of conversation we need to continue. And it might be useful to maybe we continue this and we draw on more people as well, like Andrew's in the chat and others. And we can think through, I don't know. I really think, look, one of my big goals, especially because my precarious academic job is at major risk right now, as are those of many of my colleagues here. And so I plan on moving towards more public engagement. That's part of the reason I'm doing more live streaming and whatnot. And so I think we need to go about this in a strategic way. I don't think everybody needs to agree. I think the point is we're trying to platform everybody's voice. And I think it's about thinking through how to make as much noise as we can is really the biggest goal. We make as much noise as we can so that we can get as many voices out there as we can, so that we can get as many different perspectives out there as we can, because each of those different voices and perspectives jives with different people in the public, because they're all, you know, they listen to different types of ways of thinking about the world. No, totally. And so I think that's what we need to think through is initiatives where we can get more of all of us to just shout into the void in a loud enough way that it stops being the void and it becomes more of a functioning ecosystem of archaeology communication, if you see what I mean. And so, you know, you guys have one there.
The longer you stare into the void, the longer it stares into you. So maybe I augment what you have to say. I love my sayings, but what we really need is we need a chorus. You know, a chorus, a choir, is not everybody singing the same note. We have basses, we have tenors, we have altos, we have sopranos, we have like baritones. People, like, we're all singing from the same sheet. We're not necessarily singing the same notes. That's it. But you know, this is the thing. It's like we can all kind of like have a variety, you know, of people there, all spreading the good work of archaeology. Woo! But you know, it's important and it's relevant. And yeah, we should be screaming very loudly, very loudly.
Yeah, that is certainly my goal, is to try to figure out how to boost this and make it louder. And I'm not going to lie, I've not figured it out completely. And there's other people that have figured it out better. And I think getting them on board is important too. That's why I'm trying to collaborate more with Milo Rossi and others. And so, you know, I think it's why we need to reach out to other communities beyond archaeology as well to try to do that.
I think, yeah. But the other thing is that, like, even online content is really difficult. We at the podcast network, we got our first 1 million downloads in a year in 2023, despite existing since 2014. You know, we've never kind of gone for views. We've just done stuff that we wanted to do, and people were listening to it. But we got better with how we were doing it. We were kind of learning how to improve what we did and kind of like all added together. But it was a slow kind of progress. We need to do this a lot quicker, you know. And I think
Yes,
for us,
that's what
our
I see. Is
perspective,
I see
yeah,
there's so many good initiatives that I really support,
yeah,
but I think we need to try to learn from how to get numbers. I think Andrew put it in here specifically. It's simply a numbers game, and
it
because
is, yeah,
otherwise, we're just at risk of talking so much to ourselves, and that's a problem. We need to be doing outreach and public engagement, not doing the kind of stuff that pats us on the back because we can say to our committee or our grant committee or our department or whatever, oh, I have a podcast that has like, you know, that like, fuck that. We have to reach lots of people, and like, this is not meant to denigrate anybody, because I think you guys are doing a great job. I think other people are doing a great job. I think that's, you guys have like laid the groundwork upon which we all need to keep building off of, if you see what I mean. But we do need to think and strategize about how to get those numbers in a real clear-headed, practical way. Because otherwise, yeah, then we're just stuck having a conversation that very few people are listening to, and it's not making an impact when we are at a crisis for the field, for higher education, for science in general, for how archaeology laws are being changed. And so we got to do this quick. And we have to, and also, huh?
Sounds like a great description of your YouTube channel. You know, everything you just said. Screaming
Well,
into
yeah,
the
that's
void.
what I'm trying to.
In the time of crisis,
This is what
nobody's listening.
Yeah, shit. I should this is being recorded. I got to listen to this and turn this into my YouTube channel intro. That's a good idea.
Yeah, no, that should be it.
This is a time of crisis. The future is looking back on us now, and we have to answer. No, exactly. And so, but we have to get numbers, and we have to, you know, I think we need to figure out how to find the magic tightrope walking of getting that nuance across, and how the sausage is made, while also still doing it in a way that occasionally things will go viral and occasionally things will get those numbers to draw in new audiences, younger audiences, audiences from different areas. And so, like I said, it's not something I fully cracked. I don't think anyone really has that are experts per se. There's very few, I should say. Certainly the most successful archaeology communicators in the world are not archaeologists. You know, like even the really famous ones, like Mary Beard or Alice Roberts, they are wonderful communicators of archaeology. Neither of them are archaeologists, you know. Or you think about the top YouTubers on YouTube, Milo Rossi and Stefan Milo. They both have archaeology undergrads and almost no field experience. I love them. I think they're doing a great job, but they're not sharing the perspective of that. And so it's I don't have an answer. But I think we have to think through how to leverage off of each of us, all of us, and think through how to get this across in a big way. And I don't have an answer, but I'm working at it.
Yeah, but having an answer and like spoon fitting that out to people is the thing that we have to like reject. This is going to take time, it's going to take effort, and it's going to take communication, and that is what's going to make it. You know, putting the effort in now that's how we're going to get there. We don't need to have an answer today, but we can work together to make things better for everybody. I think that's going to be very, very good, and I look forward to that. You know, whether it's more real archaeology or it's more crossovers. Oh, is this a crossover episode? Or is this just an episode? Is this just a bizarro universe that I inhabit? You know, like I noticed
you do inhabit a bizarro universe.
I do.
You definitely inhabit a bizarro universe. Yeah, and so I don't know. I don't have an answer, but we need to kill what we have, and I think we need to kill the perspective among archaeologists that we just need to publish in peer-reviewed journals and jazz like that. And we need to promote this kind of conversation where we're arguing and yelling at each other and disagreeing and saying some stupid shit occasionally. And, and at the same time, expressing a nuanced perspective on what we can do to make the world a little better. And so, this is, and yeah, I think there's an advantage to long form podcasting in that way. I think, and in particular, right now, long form podcasting is really popular. So, we need to, again, take advantage of that and try to tap into those numbers, right? Because right now, this is our opportunity because it's the best way to reach people.
No, definitely. I totally agree with you. I would say the same thing.
Okay. Well, the archaeologist is dead. The archaeologist is dead. Long live the new archaeologist.
Thank you.
All right. So, do you want to spend
the blog post is dead as well because, I've just ripped it apart to death. Fantastic. A fisting grave.
Do we want to ask for questions for just 10-15 minutes?
Yeah, I'm good with that.
I think I have something that says ask questions in the chat. And just a reminder to people, I have extra videos and I'm going to keep adding to them for channel members and for patrons on Patreon. I take a little more of a cut if you subscribe on Patreon. So I recommend that over channel membership, but either way is good. So do feel free to support the channel. I saw some people were interested in me doing, say, in-person filming in the field, in the lab, in a museum. That's something I would like to do. I have access to people that would like me to film them, but I need to be able to fund that because I might not have a job next year. So any sort of tips, any kind of membership in Patreon, it'll go towards trying to build this channel to get that behind-the-scenes access to stuff. So in the meantime, hey, Raven, I know that you are in, I think you said New Zealand or Australia and you're sipping tea right now, but I'm drinking beer right now. Just what I mean is I've taken classes in pubs as well. So, I think it doesn't mean we can't have a drink. It just means that we need to, the approach we take and what we say is like teaching a student rather than sharing our research.
So if you're a student of Flint's, you can have a
Okay.
beer while you're in his class, is what he's saying.
I don't think the university allows that.
I don't know. That's what I understand from this live stream. If I was watching it and one of your students, I'd put two and two together.
So there's a question about whether I plan to do a dig with amateur volunteers. No, I don't have the capability of doing that right now. I do work on other people's projects right this second, but the way Greece works, where I mostly do my research, they're not very welcoming in the same way. But if you look up projects in your area, you might be able to find community projects, Shrek PMC. Do you have more to add about community archaeology?
If there's something in your area, go for it. I was 3 years ago. I did a really cool project near me. It was actually interesting. There used to be a paper mill down the road, and what happened was at the turn of the 19th century, people basically went on strike, and so the paper mill owners got a bunch of scabs to cross the picket line in any of the houses nearby because they were all owned by people who worked at the mill and they refused entry. So the company built these ramshackle wooden houses along the row outside the mill. Now, nobody had ever actually excavated these. So we were there digging them out and measuring them and reporting them and recording them. That was fantastic because you could see these temporary structures with broken ceramics in them, glass bottles. I found a glass bottle and it still had it was brown, it was totally intact, and it was a beautiful specimen, and it was just left there, when they left. So it was really cool. It was literally a 20-minute drive from my house, and it was just a great opportunity to kind of get back digging, because I don't do a lot of digging at the moment. So if you ever have the opportunity to dig near where you are, I would definitely take it, even for a day.
Yeah, just even getting in touch with a local museum or a local scholars at a university near you, you might find opportunities that are available for volunteer. Let's see. So we have something from Some Rye. They say that it's difficult to find podcasts or videos that go into enough detail, and lectures oftentimes have terrible audio/video.
Oh, lectures
Yes.
are so
So
bad. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
go check out
I-
Archaeology. Real-archaeology.com has a list of fantastic uh, archaeology communicators, YouTube channels, podcasts. Go check out the Archaeology Podcast Network. There's again a list of really good podcasts by archaeology podcasters of various sorts. And so I think it's worthwhile to go check those out if you're looking for podcasts and YouTube channels that go into that depth and that have, by and large, better production quality or reasonable production quality.
I will
Obviously,
ask
we're all
this.
doing this on our own shoestring. Huh? Yeah.
There is a gap currently, in my estimation, for a science archaeology podcast. In my estimation, I feel like there's a gap. I'd love to fill it, but I have too much on my plate. So if there's anybody who comes across this live stream and thinks, hey, I want to do a science archaeology podcast, just, you can find my contact details. I am contactable. Okay?
You are contactable.
It is possible. And last year, we actually, as the podcast network, we actually put a call out for new podcasts to join us. We're cool because you don't actually pay to be on the network. We kind of do all the hosting and everything. We just expect you to record episodes and all that. So we put a call out and we got new shows joining us. And it was really cool process. We might be doing it again later this year, maybe, depending on our resources. And I think it would be a really opportunity if you're thinking about doing a podcast is to learn about podcasting, maybe start a podcast, do your own stuff, and bring things that are not already there. There is a gap for archaeology science. So if you're a scientist also doing archaeology, maybe done a joint degree, there's space out there. That is a gap that's needing filled.
That's good because I'm going to be filling some of that because I'll start doing some live streams and other videos from the lab here at Cardiff. I just worked out the permissions and stuff to do that today. Actually today, yeah. And so I will start doing some of that soon. Partly because I'm teaching some of that right now. I'm teaching zooarchaeology and biomolecular archaeology. So it's a great excuse to combine my teaching with my YouTube channel a little bit. Somebody recommended the Fall of Civilizations podcast. Yes, that's a fantastic podcast. I've been talking with Paul Cooper about trying to get on here at some point to plug his book. So yeah, I will try to have him on, and it's a good podcast and YouTube channel. Let's see. Yeah, the crew, the Fancy's nice. We follow each other on Blue Sky. They have a good channel that does some local archaeology where they are. Yeah. Okay. I think that sort of wraps it up. The archaeologist is dead. We have a new archaeologist now. Let's continue this conversation, and maybe next time we have you on, we'll find something fun to debunk, and then we'll keep thinking of some different things to do. And we'll have you on. Oh, wait, we have one question from Twitch that just came in. I have a question. Here in the U.S., we're looking at potential dismantling of academic standards and accreditation. Do you think this will impact the science community worldwide? Yes, in a big way. Yeah. Science is very much an international endeavor. I've never worked on a project, and I've worked on dozens of different field projects or research projects. I've never worked on a project where the collaborators are only from one country. So to have one of the major powerhouses in science dismantling higher education and science around them. And by the way, it's not just the US, it is being absolutely dismantled here in the UK as well right now.
Yeah.
We're going to see a major impact on international science and education. And I'm hoping to have more discussions about that in the coming weeks on this YouTube channel. And in particular, once we go on strike, if we go on strike, which I'm imagining we will, then I'll probably be covering it like every day at that point. Because I don't want to cross the digital picket line, even though I might have to. So instead, I can promote the disasters that are happening. So yeah, it's a major thing. A lot of archaeologists and scientists have been laid off from a number of U.S. Federal government institutions, National Park Services, National Science Foundation, in Department of the Interior, a range of different places that employ these, and other types of science institutions as well. So this is a serious thing. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in. I don't know when I'm going live next. I don't actually have a scheduled one just yet. I'm planning on doing 1 or 2 next week, but I'm waiting on the exact schedule. So stay tuned. I hope to have a video ready this weekend, an interview I did a while ago, and I'm way behind with YouTuber Raven Da Silva from Dig It Raven. Is that the name of the YouTube channel? About her book, Dig It with Raven. That's what it is. Yes, she was awesome. It was a great chat, and it's about her new book, The Other Civilizations. And so I hope that we can get that out this weekend. We're almost there. If not, it'll be next week. So thank you all for tuning in. Love and archaeology to all. Yeah, the chat was awesome, and we'll see everybody in the near future. Ciao all.
Bye.